Alright, got everything pretty much up to speed to that current date on the map globally, minus relations with various Axis South American of that nature. Still got a few more odds and ends to detail as far as various occupied zones like Yugoslavia, Serbia. Needs a profile to dictate what will happen between now and the successful uprising of the Communist Party, Tito. I got that set for 44 in my game files. That might not necessarily be success, but it'll be an added challenge in the game if you're playing as the Axis. Still got to write a bunch of little files for all these guys. Croatia, they got an Orbit file now, but they'll primarily be like a home guard army. There's going to be partitions and shit popping up. There was like, I think 12 significant campaigns, if you ask a Serbian, 12 significant events throughout the war pertaining to Axis campaigns of a various nature in this region in regards to putting out the fires, the partitions, and the exile government was putting into play throughout this. In my opinion, this is the point in history where Hitler could have won the war, tactically speaking, strategically speaking, in on a field battle. Way of looking at things. In reality, I think even if the UK was completely defeated and this was all the Axis, their government would have went to exile over here, and eventually the nukes would have came over here, and the war would have been over one way or the other. So the only way that they could have won the war in reality is if they would have developed nuclear weapons or atomic weapons prior to the Allied powers, which wasn't very likely. But if Hitler had chosen to take a more defensive posture towards the USSR and their expansionist aims, even if it was a temporary measure, all along this front, protecting Romania. Territorial claims were settled through the non-aggression pacts that the USSR shared with Germany, and Finland was a bit of a issue with the USSR, but they probably could have held out long enough without going into any further conflict with or without Barbarossa actually happening. So I would have taken, or I can't say I would have, but if Hitler were ever going to win this war strategically and tactically against Great Britain and the Allied powers on the ground, it would have been to take a defensive posture here and send heavier forces into the Middle East that were used for Barbarossa, and could have, and the opportunity to solidify Turkish entry into the Axis and securing the Middle Eastern regions, and eventually the whole of Africa could have very, very, very likely have played out had Barbarossa not happened and the German armed forces and their Axis allies concentrated more on this theater of battle. Operation Countenance would have never happened in Iran because the UK would have never had a common ground of a shared enemy in Germany in order to justify an operation such as Countenance against Persia, Iran, in September of 1941. Right now, UK is gearing up for Syria-Lebanon campaign, and they're going to be successful, and that's going to seclude Iraq and essentially seal the fate of Italian East Africa and eventually North Africa. It'll also solidify the alliance with Soviet Union, like I said, sharing a common enemy in the center. And this was Hitler's big belly flop that lost him the war. In this 2-month span, he made the decisions that were necessary to ensure that they would not be able to successfully defeat the powers that they had collectively acquired as enemies simultaneously. It bit off more than they could chew. They were likely the most potent military force, fighting force in the world up until this point in time, but that only goes so far. I mean, you don't have the structure, the resources. All these nations that have experienced battles are industrially compromised, not only due to physically damaged infrastructure, but a population that is adjusting to what the hell is going on in the world around them. Work isn't really on everybody's. I mean, it is and it isn't. Like, in a sense, like, you know, you got to do what you got to do, and you know, but you can only do what you can do. And when everything is kind of hectic and crazy and wild and changing constantly and rapidly, it's hard for people to settle in and be productive, and that just goes across the board for anybody, regardless of how productive these countries were during the war. The war going on was definitely a factor in the ability to produce to optimal and required levels of output to sustain the war effort for as long as it would have had to have been sustained for any sort of glimmer of hope to have emerged for an Axis victory. I got everything written for Japan. Basically, I have to finish up. I actually have all of their physical actions written in the game now, for the most part, throughout this whole theater, up until the acquisition of Indonesia. So I have to do the campaigns. I already wrote this one that goes to Port Moresby, I believe. Yes. This was the high water mark of the Japanese advance, I believe. Through here, they landed on these beaches, and they came. I can't recall if they actually took Port Moresby or if they battled and were pushed back at Port Moresby. But anyway, I'm gonna have to program in some bombing of the Australian coast, and obviously the Australian response. I got the Guadalcanal campaign written in for Australia, the United States already. And then I'm gonna have to write the Allied portion, pushing back. So that's gonna be You know, like the island hopping, and eventually the acquisition of Okinawa, which will lead to Japan getting nuked at Nagasaki and Hiroshima. Hiroshima first, and then Nagasaki, and then Japan will surrender. I have them surrendering to the United States. If all those conditions are met, then they will surrender to the United States on August 15th. You get a little message from me defining the end of the war, and you know, you can keep playing if you want. It's never stops. I got a bunch of crap programmed in here beyond this, but this is the structured and detailed part. This 10-year span called World War II. I've pretty much got everything written, including alternative history scenarios that I've shown in the past with the Treaty of the Volga. That's a fake treaty. That could potentially happen. The USSR, in that case, Stalin will remain in power, and this will be Russia from here over, and this will be Axis from here over. Yada yada yada. There's a bunch of that. I've also got everything programmed in detail for Russia's response up until bag ration, and I have a generalized set of files that decide bag ration at this point, but I'll detail that further when I get to it. I still got to review everything I wrote for Russia and make sure everything's going to work properly. And I'm going to put a Dragoon in there, which follows up Overlord, which is the invasion of Normandy's beaches, which, to be completely honest with you, and I'm not embarrassed about it, I thought they were here for the longest time, because of the similar, I mean, for a cartoon, these two locations look similar, and to be honest with you, I have studied the war in chronological order, so I really, despite the D-Day being one of the most popular events in pop culture that everybody knows about, I knew very, very, very little about D-Day up until a few months ago. I don't like skipping around too much. Of course, I knew that it happened, and I knew the dates, but I read about things in detail, in chronological order. Or, yeah, I guess you would call it chronological order. So therefore, I had not read much about the battles in France, and I thought D-Day was in I guess this is Brittany as well. I know this is Brittany, where Normandy beaches are, I believe. Anyway, that's where the invasion is going to happen. Here. Sword, Juno, Jersey. Not Jersey. Where's Jersey? That'll actually hold out through the to the end of the war. And then I got to write the Arturo Hidalgo files. Secret escape to Argentina. So I can continue watching and playing possibly till the end of the war, so I can see how everything comes together. And then I'll eventually include these regions. You know, like I'll bring Austria back to life if I lose. Then I'll include the regions of East and West Germany, respectively, as far as their post-war division went, with, you know, Berlin being split east and west. I might I'm not going to get that far yet. Regardless, the war is almost there. So close, yet so far. I still have a lot of reading and research and implementing to do. But as I'm going along, like I recently allocated more Orbats for Japan. I took the Orbat file out and defined further locations in the Orbats. Did another round of quick painting to give it a little bit more three-dimensional pop. I can even make it better than that. I'm still defining terrain elements as I go along, a few at a time, sporadically when I feel like it, and it's getting a little bit better, a little bit better, a little bit better, and eventually it'll be great for, you know, what it is. And that's all I have to say about that. This is my report on my progress, and that's that. Good night. Love, Chuck.